1937, the Mitsubishi A6M fighter was quickly becoming obsolete, as aircraft design was advancing very quickly. The Imperial Japanese Navy demanded a new monoplane fighter with speed, agility, range and firepower. The specifications demanded were so high that many considered them impossible to reach, including Mitsubishi's competitor, Nakajima, who dropped out of the competition to design a new aircraft for this reason. However, Mitsubishi eventually created an aircraft, the A6M2, which met, and in fact exceeded, the required specifications. It was fast, agile, had a long range, and powerful weaponry. In the opening stages of the Pacific War, the Zero was a deadly opponent for the US airmen. It was extremely agile, and the American pilots had never encountered anything like it, so they didn't know how to combat it. However, the Zero did have its limits. By 1943, it had been outclassed by the far more robust F6F Hellcat and Vought F4U Corsair fighters. These had much more powerful engines and much sturdier airframes. They weren't as maneuverable as the Zero, but they could dictate the engagement with their superior speed. Japan simply couldn't keep pace with the advance in aircraft design, so was forced to continue producing the Zero long after it became obsolete. By the last year of the war, the Zeros were usually used as kamikazes, the pilot flying himself directly into Allied shipping as a final sacrifice to the Emperor. The Zero began the war as a formidable aircraft that was the scourge of US pilots, but while aircraft design surged onward, the A6M was left behind. Despite this, it remains an icon, and is one of the most well-known aircraft of the war. So, the Zero in War Thunder. Well, the Japanese naval fighter line begins with the A6M's predecessor, the A5M. The first Zero you can fly is the A6M2-N, which is a hydroplane version of the A6M2, the details of which I will go into in a moment. This is identical to the A6M2 except for the addition of the equipment allowing it to land on water. This was primarily designed to cover hard-to-reach island bases, which couldn't be easily covered by regular fighters, especially places where an airfield couldn't be reached. Obviously these had quite a bad effect on the plane's characteristics, which is why this is a lower battle rating than the A6M2. That's the N, battle rating 2.3. Next is the A6M2 itself, battle rating 3.3 on both the versions. The only difference between the Model 11 and this one, the Model 22, is the 22 has folding wingtips to allow easier fitting onto a carrier, so more planes could be fit onto the deck or underneath in the hangar. So the A6M2 was powered by a Sakai 12 engine, ironically enough manufactured by Mitsubishi's opponents, Nakajima, who they beat to win the contract to design this new fighter. It developed 925 horsepower. It was armed with twin 7.7mm light machine guns in the engine cowling, here and here, and twin 20mm Type 99 cannon, one here and one here. That's the oil cooler intake, the supercharger intake, which was later moved to the top of the engine cowling. The American pilots could identify an A6M from the front because it had the horizontal stabilizer was higher up. With a P40, for example, this would be closer to the wing, and the round black distinctive engine cowling. Next is the A6M3. This had clipped wingtips, but these were less about a requirement to change the flight characteristics. This was more to make manufacture easier and to make maintenance easier, because it's easier to maintain a flat edge than a rounded edge. The A6M3 had a new engine, the Sakai 21, with a 2-speed supercharger, which made it a bit more effective at higher altitudes, and the output of this new engine was 1130 horsepower, which is 205 more than the A6M2's Sakai 12 produced. It had a larger propeller to make more efficient use of the power, and it had more ammunition for the cannons, so it's 100 per cannon now instead of 60 per cannon in the A6M2. The supercharger intake, as I mentioned previously, has been moved to the top of the cowling, and it was previously down here. So that's the A6M3, battle rating at 3.7, tier 3. Next is the Model 22. This had integral wing tanks, which means they're mounted inside the wings, as well as the fuselage tanks which are already present, to increase the range of this plane, because the more powerful engine needed much more fuel. With the wing tanks, this model was actually the longest ranged Zero out of all those produced. The folding wings were returned to reduce the wing loading because the changes added weight, so the wingspan was increased to reduce the wing loading. Next is the 22KO, or KO, also known as the A6M 322A. This had the newer Type 99-2 cannons, which had a longer barrel, as you can see, which protruded from the wing. This gave it a higher muzzle velocity, and the Dash 2 also had a faster rate of fire. That's 4.3, by the way. Next is the A6M5. This is a modified A6M3. It had shorter wings to reduce drag, and it had thicker skin on the surface of the wing, and rounded wingtips to increase the diving speed. It had a new exhaust system. As you can see, the exhausts are exposed now, and that actually provided some extra speed from the exhaust thrust. The A6M5 Co, also known as the A, premium gift plane, also battle rating 5.0. This had even thicker wing skin than the original M5, and it had a belt-fed system for the cannons instead of drum-fed, which allowed more ammunition to be stored. So these had 125 rounds per gun instead of 100. Finally, the Otsu, or the B. This had a thicker armoured glass windscreen to protect the pilot, fuel tank fire extinguishers, because Zeros were quite prone to fires, and it replaced one of the engine cowling's 7.7 light MGs with a 13.2mm Type 3 heavy machine gun, which was based on the American M2 Browning 50 cal, but it used a French 13.2x96 Hotchkiss cartridge. That's that. That's the Zero in War Thunder. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Rage for the Sky. See you soon.